Okay, hello all you people out there, this is Michael of the 2.5 Stooges, and I am here today to talk about the Epic Battle Fantasy series. So for those of you reading the title of this video, no, Epic Battle Fantasy 5 has not been announced yet. I can see where you get that idea, but I think the title is fairly clear that this is not about that. EBF4 has just been put out on Steam as of my recording this audio. After that, I think Matt Rossack, the creator, is going to be taking a short break from code, probably dealing with the Steam release for a little while, and then he said a couple times earlier he's going to be working on an Epic Battle Fantasy Tower Defense, and at this point in time, probably only he knows what that entails, and maybe not even, but whatever it is, it's probably going to turn out awesome. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, Epic Battle Fantasy is regarded by many as the best series of Flash games on the internet. If you want to go play them, you can find them on basically every major Flash hub on the internet. Newgrounds, Congregate, a bunch of other ones that I'm not thinking of. Totally not doing any self-advertising here, but I've also done a YouTube playthrough of every one of them, except for Bullet at some point in time, so you can go and have a look at that. Anyway, so a bit of backstory with me with Epic Battle Fantasy. I've been a fan of the series since I want to say I was in like 7th or 8th grade, back in the days when Brian and I had the free time to just go around the internet playing random Flash games. And for a bit of perspective of how long that's been, I'm a freshman in college now. So I have seen quite a bit of development in the lifetime of that series. Anyway, for this video I'm mostly going to be talking about EBF 3 and 4 because I think they represent what the series looks like now best out of all the games. 1 and 2 were pretty good, but they were a somewhat different style. They were more linear, they were less typical RPG style. Adventure Story and Bullet Haven were different genres altogether. So I guess I'll start by talking about Epic Battle Fantasy 4. Now, don't get me wrong, that was a great game. If I was rating it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it about a 9, 8.5, or 9, but it was sort of a letdown, at least for me. It was a lot longer than EBF3, and as a result, I think that caused the story to be more distributed throughout the game. There were much longer stretches where I was just running around and fighting enemies than advancing through the plot with cutscenes and bosses and things like that. I'm not entirely sure what the running time of the playthroughs I did of those were, but EBF4 was definitely a lot longer than 3. And at the same time, while it seemed a little bit too long from the story perspective, from the gameplay content perspective, it seemed like sometimes there wasn't even enough, because I played the game 2, 3, maybe 4 times, and there's still things about that game that I don't know what they do. There's still summons I've never used, there's still equips I've never used, there's still spells I've never used. And not because I think on paper they look inferior, but because there's just not enough time to try it all out. And there's no real easy way to remedy that except for either removing them or just slapping more game and story on, and neither of those are very nice options. I don't have any suggestions for how that could be fixed or anything, but I think it's an interesting problem, and I'm interested to see how future Epic Battle Fantasy games address that. Because we all know that removing features from a game is always at least a little bit disappointing, because there will be some people somewhere that really like them if the game is big enough, like Epic Battle Fantasy certainly is. And we also all know that you can't simply write a good story because you feel like it and slap it on at the end of a game's development. And yes, anybody who has played Pokemon X and Y will know exactly what I'm talking about. But once again, EBF4 was a great game, EBF3 was also a great game. Matt Rossack has done a lot of things right in game development that a lot of professionals who have been working in the industry for many, many years still don't understand. Like, you're allowed to make dialogue funny as long as it's not uncensored locker room humor. You're allowed to break the fourth wall as much as you really want, which I almost never see in most video games these days, Super Paper Mario and Kid Icarus Uprising notwithstanding. You're allowed to talk about things that happen in real life, thinking specifically of the protesting NPCs in Whitefall and EBF4 that were parodying the Occupy Wall Street and showing just how stupid it really was for a bit of political commentary, which is really quite interesting because Matt Rossack is from the UK. But anyway, those are things that I'm fairly certain you would never see in any retail video game, and I'm even more fairly certain that you would never see them in as great quantity as you have in Epic Battle Fantasy, and I really hope that that continues in future games. I know it will. I know Matt Rossack is not one to just sit still and follow convention and whatever. Another thing that I would think would be really interesting to see in a future Epic Battle Fantasy game, although I don't know how likely it is to happen, would be to actually revisit areas from previous games. Like, I forget the name, I'm a terrible person, but the main hub from EBF3, and maybe you could go walking around and seeing what everything looks like in the aftermath of Akron, or once again Whitefall a couple years later and see what the protesters are up to, or the power plant in the aftermath of the Praetorian virus thing. I forget what that was all about. It was kind of weird, and seeing how the workers are getting along. I don't know Flash. I don't know if it's really possible to just like import an area from one version of the Epic Battle Fantasy engine to another. I also don't know how interesting it would be for the creator to manually recreate entire areas again in a different engine. We'll see. I kind of doubt that'll happen, but it's another interesting idea. I also think it would be somewhat interesting to see a little bit more interaction between things like the main EBF 1, 2, 3, 4 XYZ titles and the side games like Adventure Story and Bullet Haven. Adventure Story kind of falls off on its own plot, where Lance is basically a Donkey Kong and Natalie's a Princess Toadstool and Matt is basically a Super Mario Jumpman sort of figure, and Bullet Haven is basically just another version of Toho and other Bullet Hell type games. And they have a couple similarities with everything, like swords and the armor and upgrade and whatever mechanics, and no legs, but I think it would be sort of interesting to see them more in the same, I guess I would say the same paradigm. Perhaps make EBF 5 instead of a overhead RPG like a 2D platformer. I don't know. I don't know how anybody else would feel about that. I don't know if Matt really has other interests in game design that he's trying out and experimenting with in the side games, but that's that. I don't have any other ideas at the moment. To whoever happens to be watching this, please feel free to throw around your own ideas in the comments. Respond to each other's comments, multi-threaded comments. YouTube implemented those for a reason. I'll be really interested to see what other people think. It would also be really interesting if Matt Rossick himself sees this and responds in some way or another, but I'm not counting on that happening at all because I'm fairly certain that these videos crop up on YouTube pretty frequently, and if he responded to every one of them, then he wouldn't have any time to do anything else. But that's it for me here. I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope everyone else is looking forward to the future of Epic Battle Fantasy as I am. For now, rate, comment, and subscribe. Watch some of the stuff I've uploaded, and I will see you later.